Want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank our friends in the media who are here. I am Senator Rob Ortt, New York State Senate Republican leader, and I am very proud to be here with my colleagues from our Long Island delegation. We have Senator Phil Boyle, who is affectionately referred to as the dean of the delegation. I don't know what his degree is in, but he is the dean of the delegation, no doubt. Of course, we have Senator Alexis Wyke, who represents this area. Senator Wyke does a fantastic job in her first term, especially on the topic that we're here to talk about. Senator Matera, who's been a phenomenal new member as well. And then, of course, we're joined by our candidate for District Attorney here, Ray Tierney. Ray, we're happy to have you standing with our delegation as well. We're here today to talk about the increase in violent crime across Long Island, across New York City, and across New York State. I represent probably as far away from where we are today in New York State, the Western New York region, and the city of Buffalo is on a historic clip that they've never hit before when it comes to shootings and violent crime. Rochester, Syracuse, New York City, Albany, Saratoga, and of course, where we are here in Long Island. Every demographic, every part of the state has seen an increase in shootings, an increase in violent crime. So for a lot of folks that are out there, they're asking the question, why? They're concerned, but they're asking the question, why is that happening? The reason it is happening is because of the policies that have been enacted by the Democratic majorities since 2019. Specifically bail reform, discovery reform, but a lot of other policies that have handcuffed our police. Obviously calls for defunding the police, specifically the NYPD, the parole board releasing a number of violent offenders, but the bail reform law specifically, when you consider the fact that we've heard a lot of discussion about we need to get illegal guns off the street, right? We all hear that. We need to get illegal guns off the street. Illegal guns are always involved with these shootings, this increase in crime. These aren't happening from legal gun owners, they're happening from illegal guns. Yet, under the bail reform, possession of an illegal firearm is a non-bailable offense. You get an appearance ticket and you're back on the street the same day to go get, obviously, another illegal gun to do whatever you were going to do with the first illegal gun that you had on you. Someone that is called an illegal firearm is up to no good. We all know that. There's no data, there's no study that I need to come to that conclusion. And don't just take our word for it. David Soros, who's the district attorney in Albany County, Democrat, probably a more progressive Democrat, he has come out against bail reform and said that this has absolutely played a role in the increase in crime. Eric Adams, the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City, has said this is playing a role in the increase in crime. Dermot Shea, New York City Police Commissioner, has said this has played a role. These are all prominent Democrats. Mayor Byron Brown in the city of Buffalo. These are all prominent Democrats who have said unequivocally this is playing a role and is reducing public safety and making our communities less safe. And by the way, where are a lot of these statistics? Who are the victims? Because this is important. We talk all the time about the criminals. We forget that there's victims. There are families who don't have loved ones today because of this increase in crime. Who are these victims? Many times these victims are people of color, minority communities that are ravaged by the scourge of drug gangs, ravaged by shootings. And we don't hear about the victims. We only want to talk about the ethnicity based on the criminal side of things. We need to be far more concerned with victims and the rights and protecting future victims and stopping would-be victims going forward. And we have not been. You don't hear one word, except from our conference, about victims in the halls of Albany. All you hear about is more rights, more, we're very concerned with those who would commit crimes and far less concerned about those who would be the victims of such crimes. I penned a letter on behalf of our conference recently to the Office of Court Administration asking for them to do a deep dive so we can have the data, because there are folks out there who continue to say, well, there's no correlation that bail reform and these changes in the criminal justice reform, the most significant changes in our lifetime, 90% of arrests are now non-bailable in New York State. That came right from the Senate Democrats, 90%. But there's a lot out there who will say, no, you know what? We don't know that there's any correlation. I haven't seen any data. Therefore, their conclusion is there's not a correlation. Now, most New Yorkers know there's a connection. Most New Yorkers paying attention know there's a connection. In fact, the people who work in the criminal justice system, people who are cops, like Eric Adams, people who are district attorneys, like David Soares and Ray Tierney, people who work in this criminal justice system, they know unequivocally there's a connection. And I'll take their word over the words of, a professor at some university who's never worked a day in their life in the criminal justice system. I'll take the opinion of cops and prosecutors any day about the impact that this law has had on public safety across our state. And the only way we're going to change these laws, we need to send different people to our state capitol who have a different worldview and who are willing to undo these disastrous laws and put public safety paramount and first over the rights of criminals. Senator Wyke knows this all too well. She comes from a law enforcement family. Senator Matera knows this all too well, and Senator Boyle knows this all too well, and all of my colleagues have stood very firm on the need to undo the disastrous bail law, to get the data, and to return to a public safety first mentality. So at this time, I want to call up my good friend, my colleague, and the dean of our Long Island delegation, Senator Phil Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Leader, and thank you for trekking all the way down here to Long Island. This is a statewide issue, and I want to thank my colleagues in government, Senator Matera, Senator Wyke, and of course, Ray Tierney, our great district attorney candidate here in Suffolk County. I read a quote. We have a legislature in Albany and the City Council of New York City, and I'm speaking specifically to New York, and it's echoed across the country, with prosecutors who provide their primary goal is to basically take care of the defendants and not focus on the victims. This is not some right-wing Republican saying. This is Eric Adams, the Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City, and likely next mayor. Eric Adams was a state senator, and he fought against changes like this for years. And now, in his new role, he's potentially going to be a bulwark. But it's very sad that he needs to use his position, as a Democrat, by the way, to fight against the far, far left that's controlling the philosophy and ideology in Albany. David Soares, the Albany District Attorney that Leader Ortt referenced. I don't know if you guys know Albany politics, but David Soares won his primary for District Attorney of Albany by being a socialist. He was further left than any of the other candidates running in this Democratic city of Albany. And he thinks that bail reform is a major cause of this increase in crime. And believe me, it's happening in Albany. I've been up there for decades, and I've never seen the kind of violence we're seeing now. Gunshots, stabbings, on almost a daily basis. I would also like to point out that we can only do so much as legislators. We can fight it, we can fight these changes, and we have, but we need the help of prosecutors as well. And that's why I'm so happy that Ray Tierney is here with this. When the time came to really stand up against the majorities, the liberal majorities in Albany, in the state Senate and the state Assembly, Tim Tierney, Madeline Singas, they showed their face, but they did not really put it on the line, because every Democrat up there is afraid of the left. Longtime moderates who have been pro-law enforcement, quote unquote, over the years, they're keeping their mouth shut. They're not saying, we're not going to vote for this. Absolutely, this nonsense like bail reform, they knew it was bad, but they were so afraid of a primary from another socialist Democrat that they voted for it. And we saw that with all the Democrats on Long Island. We saw that with all the Democrats in New York City and upstate. It can only get worse. So we need to stop this, roll back this insane bail reform, and we need prosecutors like Ray Tierney who are going to use the laws, whether they're the way they are now or the way they hopefully will change to make them more pro-victim and pro-law enforcement, and put these bad guys and bad gals in jail. No more kidding around. We cannot afford it. We cannot afford to have New York State as one of the most violent states in the country, because we're losing citizens now, and at this rate, we're going to lose everyone because everyone's afraid, even out here in the suburbs and not just in the city. And I want to thank you again for being here, and I'd like to introduce my colleague, and as Leader Ortt said, from a pro-law enforcement and law enforcement mom and wife, Senator Alexis Wyke. Senator?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Boyle, and thank you, Leader, for bringing this matter to our community, because as a law enforcement family, I can tell you that as I stand here, I do support Leader Ortt's letter to OCA and DCJS asking for a study to be immediately undertaken on whether or not there are any links to bail reform and the rise in crime. As we heard from some of our community leaders back in the spring who tried to say that arrests were down, well, of course arrests were down. In a catch and release system, arrests are always going to be down. But that doesn't mean that crime is down. Crime is up. And we know that to be a fact. And since Democrats took over Albany, we have continued to see a pro-criminal, anti-victim, and anti-law enforcement agenda. And all of us are suffering because of that. We see a parole board that's letting violent criminals be released into our society. And we see a disdain for the men and women of law enforcement that routinely put their lives in danger. And I've seen this on a regular basis as I've watched my husband get dressed and head off to work every single day for 20 years. And of course, I watch my son do the same thing. They put their lives on the line to protect us and our communities every day. And that's what they do to serve our community. And we're releasing criminals back into our community, making their job difficult and putting laws in place that don't allow them to do their job. I know that their jobs have been hard, and it's just being made more and more hard with all of the policies that are coming out of Albany. We've seen a rise in gun violence in our cities and communities across the state. And when Democrats tried to fix the ridiculous bail reform that they set, they left multiple gun crimes not eligible for bail. Currently, if you sell a gun to a child, you immediately are released. You're immediately released without bail. That's absurd, it's dangerous, and it proves that Senate Democrats care more about criminals than keeping our community safe. I've recently introduced legislation that provides that all gun-related crimes will give a judge the discretion to set bail. That means that you will not be released automatically on the street if you get arrested for a gun-related crime. Our conference has repeatedly said that we must repeal bail reform and start anew. Law enforcement, including the police, detectives, and district attorneys, must all be at the table with advocates and drafting common sense fixes, because it costs us so much money to put into place bail reform that doesn't work from one agency down to the other. We need a system that's going to work together and that's going to prove to be beneficial to everyone. And remembering the main effect is to protect our victims. That's something that we need to be well aware of, and we need to be in tune with our communities. And someone I know who is very in tune with his community is Senator Mario Matera.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Wyke, and thank you for everybody being here, especially our leader, Ortt. I know he really came down here because he's looking for real estate because he wants to move down here. He knows how beautiful our beautiful Long Island is.
A summer home.
Oh, and to our dean, yes, Senator Boyle, I thank you for all your help. And, you know, to Ray Tierney, I thank you so much for all what you have done as a prosecutor. You definitely, I commend you for all your hard work. But I just want to thank everybody for joining us here today. You know, we can sit here and join together, again, to fight the ongoing effort by some of the Senate and Assembly Democrats who continue to put the safety of our residents and communities at risk. More importantly, we are here to offer solutions that will enhance that safety, protect the lives of the men and women in blue that protect us every day from harm's way. We have all seen the impact that the Democratic idealistic efforts have had on New York City. The most vibrant city in the world, I feel, is in trouble. We know it's in big trouble because of bad politics. You know, just think about something. We had 20 years of stop and frisk. 85% of those stop and frisk were crimes. These people were criminals. And you know what? Our city was vibrant when we did have that 20 years with Mayor Giuliani and Mayor Bloomberg. 20 years of stop and frisk. And look what happened in the last 8 years to the most vibrant city in the world. The criminals are taking advantage of these changes, and we need to make sure that we bring sanity back. The situation has reached the point where some on the Democratic side are standing up finally to denounce the efforts to release the criminals and defund our police. Yes, you know what? The right job, the person choice, Eric Adams, was sitting there saying, guess what? Look what he's trying to do, and look what's happening to him. Look what all the other side, the far left, what they're doing to actually say that he's not the right choice in a lot of ways. It is time to come to repeal, not replace bail reform, protect our law enforcement community, stop any effort to release dangerous criminals, oppose any efforts to take tools away from our police or put them in danger, and most importantly, stand stronger than ever to protect our families. Maybe this will lead to some collaboration on sensible reforms that will protect our residents. We as a conference are ready to find that common ground, but we need a willing partner on the other side who is willing to work to restore sanity. Since the beginning of the year, we have offered solutions like protect those who protect us and the victims' justice agenda to protect our residents. But they have continually ignored by those on the other side. But we hold out hope that those who see the reality, regardless of the party, will stand up against crime and fight with us to protect our residents. We must continue to work to find common ground, and we must do to protect all of our families of our state. I am proud to stand with everyone here to make sure it does. Thank you again, Leader Ortt, for holding this important press conference. One thing I'd like to say, forget party sides right now. Look at this Patchogue Village. 10 years ago, you really only came here maybe to go to the stores. I think women came to go to the stores to buy their wedding shoes because that was like one of the places they would go to. And then you would leave. Guess what's happening today with this beautiful village because of law and order? We need to make sure bail reform is repealed. It cannot be replaced. It has to be repealed. But again, this is a perfect example of what law enforcement has done to protect. You have a vibrant, beautiful downtown Patchogue Village because law enforcement is here to protect us from harm's way every day. Thank you so much. And back to the leader. Thank you.
I love Senator Matera's passion. You never have to question whether he's fully engaged. He's always fully engaged. Before I introduce our next speaker, I do want to say, I want to sort of close on two things. This conference, while recently the governor has declared the rising crime as a public health crisis. I want to be clear. COVID is a public health crisis. This is man-made. We have contributed, the state legislature, and my colleagues on the other side who supported this most significant bail reform and criminal justice changes, they have contributed to the increase in crime. I don't think declaring a public health crisis is going to do a darn thing to stem the tide, especially when people that get caught with an illegal firearm are back on the street in the same day. So this conference takes very seriously the increase in crime. The difference is we also take very seriously that we need to do real solutions. We need to get very serious about stemming that tide, and simply declaring it a public health crisis is not going to do it. And lastly, to Senator Matera's point, coming out of COVID-19, we're all concerned about the New York State economy, whether it's New York City, whether it's Suffolk County, whether it's Western New York. You cannot have a prosperous economy. You cannot have a healthy business sector if employees and customers do not feel safe. And that is a real threat to the recovery of New York State, to the recovery of our working men and women, that we do not live in a safe state, a safe community, a safe city. And that is why it is vitally important that we get very serious about addressing the root cause of this increasing crime. And to that point, my next speaker is someone who knows that all too well. He has spent his life trying to put criminals in jail, trying to keep dangerous people in jail, trying to protect our communities, whether it was prosecuting dangerous drug gangs like MS-13. He has spent, I think, 26 years, not that I want to date him, but 26 years fighting to keep dangerous people locked up in jail. And that's why he is running at this critical moment for district attorney here in Suffolk County. It's my pleasure to call up Ray Tierney.
Thank you, and thanks for everyone coming. I want to thank Leader Ortt, and I want to thank these fine legislators, Phil Boyle, Alexis White, and Mario Matera, for their efforts to repeal this disastrous bail reform and criminal justice reform laws. These laws do not make us safer, quite the contrary. And from my perspective as a prosecutor, I would say that what these laws essentially do is they place the discretion in the hands of the politicians in Albany, and they remove the discretion from the hands of the experts in the courtroom, the judges, the prosecutors, and the defense attorneys, because those individuals they possess the knowledge and the expertise to determine what an appropriate bail is on any particular case. And it should be left up to the judges and the litigants to make that decision, and not the politicians in Albany. And I would also say, with regard to that, not only do you remove the discretion, but it's also against common sense, because the law prevents the judge from considering such things as dangerousness and risk of flight. And as a federal prosecutor, I can tell you those are the only two factors that a federal judge will decide when setting bail, and it should be the same in the state system as well. So the efforts of these folks behind me to repeal those laws is certainly welcome, and they're doing a great job. But that really is only half of the problem, or half of the equation, because then you have the prosecution side. And what we see in Suffolk County is, especially with regard to gun possession cases, those cases aren't getting prosecuted. Those cases aren't getting indicted. So if you have the bail situation, and then you have these cases not being promptly indicted, what you have is a revolving door of justice. And you see, we're seeing all across New York State what's happening with regard to the revolving door of justice. It began in the city, now it's spreading out to Suffolk. We're talking about July. In July alone, we've had 9 murders in Suffolk County. I can tell you that is unacceptable. That is absolutely unacceptable. Last Friday, we had a triple murder in Farmingville. In March, we had a broad daylight murder in Port Jefferson Village. These are things that would have been unheard of even a couple of years ago, and it's unacceptable. And so what we need to do is we need to when the police make an arrest, the prosecutor needs to follow up with a prompt indictment and no plea bargains for individuals who would possess a gun. And again, we see what's happening. There is several gang wars going on in Suffolk County right now, because these gang members feel that they could drive through Suffolk County with impunity, with a gun, and commit acts of violence. I'll end on this note, just to drive home the prosecution angle. Elsewhere in Suffolk County today, there's a press conference of an individual by the name of Ivor Whittingham. And a brave police officer risked his life and suffered injury, arresting Ivor Whittingham for possession of a weapon. And that is fantastic. But that's only half the story, because what's not being told is back in 2018, Ivor Whittingham was arrested for possessing a gun as a felony, and rather than serving upstate time, he was given the opportunity to plead to a misdemeanor, and he was promptly released and allowed to once again carry a gun where, thank God, he was arrested by a Suffolk County police officer. But again, it's a situation that should never happen. So what we need to do is we need to think of both components, bail and prosecution. So again, thank you very much, and thanks to these folks.
Certainly happy to take any questions on topic first. If there's any off topic, you can direct on topic questions to anyone up here. Any off topic, I will handle directly.
In terms of the legislation, obviously you're facing majorities in both houses of the Democratic government. Is there any movement from the other side now to join you in the effort?
Sure. I'll be honest, there has not been up to this point. Now, I think, as one of my colleagues mentioned, there probably are some members over there who, while not brave enough to say so, would like to see some changes, but they are concerned about the politics on the left side of the political spectrum and a potential primary. So there really hasn't been. My only hope is that when you have prominent Democrats locally, meaning a mayor, a district attorney, a police commissioner, within a Democratic city, upstate Democratic mayor, when you have these folks who are coming out saying, we got to do some changes, my hope is that they will listen to those folks, if not to us, to make changes. We would like to see the whole thing repealed and start anew. And you can start anew by taking into account, because the district attorneys and police chiefs and sheriffs, they were completely shut out of the bail reform changes. They were not a part of it. They were not at the table. This was written by the advocates, by public defenders, and by people who had been in the criminal justice system. So I don't know. I mean, in Ithaca, to give you an example, in Ithaca, there was a convicted cop killer. He killed a New York City off-duty police officer. He was released. He is now serving on the city of Ithaca, the village of Ithaca, police reform board. I just don't know what that person actually offers to community policing efforts when their only reason for being there is that they actually executed a former member of law enforcement. So these are the things that we're pushing against, and hopefully cooler heads and rational minds will prevail.
Follow up on the big side
Yep.
Is there a way to force that with the majority? Or is there a way to use another organization, whether it's the district attorneys or
Sure.
to have that information come out that way?
Obviously, it was directed at the executive agencies. I think that's the right starting point. Whether they do it or not remains to be seen. I have not heard a response. I'm not going to hold my breath because I like breathing. But I will say that there are other organizations, District Attorneys Association, Sheriff's Association, or even an outside think tank that should and I think would have the resources to do a study like this. But again, I think it's important. Look, if we're going to say we don't have the data, let's get the data, because we believe the data will back up our argument here. Any other questions for anybody up here, either on topic or any questions for me off topic? I love it. Thank you guys very much.